I had like an ego and I thought I was the best, and I not maybe not the best, but you know what I mean. Like I just had too big of an ego for where my skill set was, and I didn't have enough respect for like the live grinders.
I imagine this happens in tournaments too, but they engage in battles that they shouldn't. I'm sure I've done this as well. Like it's hard not to, uh, and not to overestimate or under or. It's also hard to like to know your like exact frequencies of like doing certain things as well. So there's that. But it's important to like judge properly. You can say with fine detail.
Dude, I mean, I think that what you just said is like one of the biggest leaks that people have because, and I had it too, right? You're saying you had, I think that almost everybody goes through it, but you have to iterate past it so fast once you identify it because I made like kind of a pact last year where I was like, I'm never talking poker with people that are constantly just like shitting on other people or like talking shit about these guys, especially good players, right? I mean, like they'll watch like one of the guys who's just made millions and millions of dollars in poker. He has houses all over the world. He's traveled the world for the past 20 years. And he'll do one thing and he's like, yeah, he's lost it. It just sucks. You know, it's like, what do you mean? The guy, like it's just so irrational to like make these judgments so quickly. And it's, it's such a better place, I think. And I feel so happy that I got to the better place where it's like every single time I'm surprised by a play, I just write it down and I try to figure out why they did it or why they're doing it. Was
No,
it
it
a
seems
thing
really.
where it's actually a mistake, or was it a true decision that they're just like, okay, well, I wanted to check back the turn because here's a great one. You know this Jesse Lonis, right? Do you know this guy?
No.
He's a young American guy. He's maybe like 25 years old, and he's just like won a ton the last like 3 years. And he's not a solver guy. He doesn't study much. Um, he's played a lot of poker, starting like limit hold'em, and I like the guy a lot. He like completely my life in a 25K in Florida a couple years ago, where I don't remember the exact board, but let's just say it was like 10-6-3, two spades, and I had ace five of spades, and we're like 60 big blinds deep, and he bets small, and it's like okay, well whatever. My wheel cards with the spade draws, they're like very likely to raise at a pretty good frequency. So I raise, and he just like snap rips in my face for like 60 big or something like that. And I'm just like, all right, I have to like fold out all this equity now. And he just had queen 10 offsuit. You know, he had just like some like kind of marginal top pair and just like completely took like ruined my equity. And
Hmm.
I remember thinking about the spot because other people at the table were like, dude, he just like sucks. Like, you know, not that they were saying it at the table, but you know what I mean. Like, people see unique strategies and they're just like, oh, this guy sucks. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, dude, he just made me fold a lot of equity in a kind of a big hand in the 25K. Like, I mean, it can't be that bad, right? Like he did something good, right? Yeah, I think that was a hand that kind of opened my eyes, and there's a lot of guys now that aren't solver guys that do quite well, and everyone wants to just be like, oh, they suck, or whatever. It's like there's a lot of other skills than how you can play a bot. Like there's so many other skills that give you ROI in tournaments, and it's not related as much.
I want to add before mentioning that. By the way, there's a huge crossover in what you said in the real world, where people do not assess people correctly based off of like details, and there's a lot of like fault finding in other people um, that happens. Actually, one of my favorite songs is about this. It's called "Without Judgment." Perception, and the theme is that perception would increase massively, and you wouldn't have all these stupid problems. But yeah, fault find like focusing too much on faults leads to all kinds of problems from like picking apart like hating on like people you work with or dating or what else like hating people online is kind of a similar thing actually.
Sure.
And mm, yeah, a lot of issues and situations that are just collaborative or can be with working with other people
Yeah, you know, it's
especially.
this kind of just popped to my mind from what you're saying, but I I've I've thought about this like quite a bit, and I sometimes say that it's like the racist grandpa like paradox almost, where like if anybody sees some random guy say something sexist or racist or bad or whatever, they're so quick to be like, oh, they're a bigot, they're terrible, they're all this stuff. But then like your grandpa who grew up whatever 100 years ago, he says something like the same thing. It's like, oh well, he was in the war, and you have so much more empathy for that person. So yeah, it
Right.
always feels like when it's somebody detached from you, even in the poker space, like I really try hard to stay off of social and all this stuff, but people have little groups and cliques, and it's like if somebody in your clique
Yeah.
says something or thinks something, you're so quick to show empathy for them and have a better judgment or a slower judgment, right? And if somebody who you're kind of against or whatever says something, people are so quick to judge them fast. So yeah, I think that's huge.
Yeah, it actually it takes a lot of empathy to find empathy for someone who's like a racist or whatever. I mean, there's ways in which that can be a thing to find empathy for these people. Um, Matter of fact, if you actually look in, I do, I'll do, we'll deviate for a little bit, but if you look into history and if you look into a lot of like the seemingly absurd decisions people make, even on like a daily basis, you can kind of find rational reasons behind a lot of them, especially like there's, especially in history. I would say like the more I've understood history, the more I see like how the world just like ends up in like all these strange ways that it is. It's seemingly irrational. Um, I have to think of like a good example. I guess like looking at something like the baby boom and how what a strange effect this had on the rest of what happened. Um, a strange effect on like the decades that are existing right now. Or like the I'm trying to think of another good example because that one's like a huge topic. But basically, people had this like really abundant mindset, or for the first time, and it was like one of the first times in history where people just could get it whatever the they
Sure.
wanted, and it was just like all just get it as much as possible when it came to sex, when it came to like eating whatever you wanted. There's like more and more to rich people as a result, and rich in all the different ways as a result of this, and then it led to a lot of problems that we see today, basically,
Sure.
where there's no longer barriers and all of that. But yeah, that I wonder if these sorts of things would interest you. It's not exactly my main audience, so all the poker stuff is um, more on point. I want to ask. Well, first I want actually. Well, first we'll go into a little bit more. Is that a subject of interest of yours to look into history or anything related to that, anthropology?
I would say I would say it's not something I spend much time thinking about. Uh, I made a decision in college to never really watch the news, and I made this.
Yeah,
I think like all the like over the last 8 years, or even in college, like everyone's talking about all these different things and how important all this stuff is, and I just remember having this kind of thought that I was like, and unless I'm going to dedicate my life to like that, I'm just not going to worry about it because I don't think I can really make a difference in a lot of these things. Whether it's like, I mean, the border, right? It's like, well, like, there's nothing I'm going to do to have any impact on the border or what we should do as a country or whatever. It's like I don't know, I don't care. So I'm never going to like pay attention to like current events and stuff. I definitely think it's interesting to like kind of follow the puzzle. Like what you're talking about is more of like you know putting the puzzle pieces together of like how things work and whatnot, and like that stuff I think is super interesting. Um, but I don't have very much knowledge on the topic. You know what I mean? So it's like I think it's interesting, but
hmm
I don't know very much about it.
Well, actually, you can make a difference. There's a decent chance, in fact. Um, and poker, it actually can make a difference because the culture of poker, if it grows, it will affect cultures nearby, adjacent cultures, like whoever interacts with the poker players, etc., which are the crypto people, who have money, or potentially celebrities now. There's the celebrity poker tour, etc., like people that can influence other people.
Sure.
So in fact, there is opportunity to influence it. I mean, it's like kind of like poker in a way. Is that, well? Maybe it is, in that if you put out something good, like maybe you get something back good. But
So for sure on that
that's
regard,
hard to
right?
prove.
In terms of like my daily life and all those things, like I do want to just like be as good as I can be at all the things I do, improve every day, like have a good growth mindset about that stuff, and like help the people
Hmm.
around me and all that. But uh, I'm not a healthcare expert. Or I'm not a the like people were talking about foreign policy and all this stuff. Like that stuff, I just can't. I can't let myself kind of get into because I do see how powerful media is and how powerful all this stuff is, and it's so difficult to figure out. Like in that time when I was younger, I was trying to figure out these things, like these big problems, and I think I just kind of came to the conclusion that at least for me, unless I'm going to dedicate a ton of time to it, I'm just never going to have a really good understanding. And there's smart people on both sides, so it feels like it felt like to me on a lot of the different issues that people were a lot more similar than they were different, right? And um, and so yeah, that's kind of why I decided to stop watching media in total and just kind of focus on the things I like to focus on.
Yeah, yeah. I do think when it comes to like using the practical approach of that kind of stuff, which yeah, it's that begs sort of a different question. You have to. That's not something that I've been working on myself. Is how do you actually make this sort of impact?
Sure.
Podcast
There you
and
go.
build a podcast and build an audience. There's a few different things you can do, but basically influence like the key players on like work your way up kind of thing, and like win small battles, like stuff like
Nice.
that, and not focus on the really huge battles. But that's another subject. But I think there has to be it has to be something that can be done. Anyway, so don't blame me though. I felt the same way. I want to ask, what other sorts of things are worth thinking about in poker that you mentioned before that aren't necessarily like something you're going to read in a sim book, that you think have a lot of value?
Whew, yeah, I mean, there's so many things, but the first thing I think I'll talk about is is kind of like the guys like Jesse Lonis and some of these like live American grinders that have done really well, and that's like really caring to win. I got buried in 2021 when I first started playing live like medium and big stakes. Um, I'd done really well online for a number of years, six max, and then I moved to tournaments, and I had like an ego, and I thought I was the best, and I not maybe not the best, but you know what I mean. Like I had just had too big of an ego for where my skill set was, and I didn't have enough respect for like the live grinders, um, because they didn't play as intricate of strategies as I was thinking I could play and whatnot. And so I would say like
Hmm.
one of the biggest things is like really caring, like really wanting to win so badly. In 2021, like I said earlier, I was a little bit too happy to be there, and it wasn't until like middle or end of 2022 that I had some kind of things happen that made me just be like, I really want to win, like more than I want to breathe or more than I want to do anything, right? And it's like I went to bed thinking about my strategies, and I woke up in the morning thinking about my strategies, and it wasn't just the sim strategies, it was like how I wanted to approach certain people, how I wanted to approach certain games, what I wanted to do to find my edges, and so I would say that like when you don't want to play poker, you're not going to play very well. And it's a game where edges are too small for most people to show up autopilot and then just win a bunch. Um, and so I've really tried to work on that in the last couple of years. Where when I show up at the table, I want to feel like I'm in a war. It's like I'm playing some guys who are my friends and whatever, but like it is like I want to win so badly. And I understand variance and all those things, but I can worry about that off the table. When I'm there playing, I'm only focused on being so present in that moment and doing everything I can to win and do my best to give myself the best chance I can to win. And I think that can be the difference of multiple percentage points of kind of your year.
Sure. Well, I think it would also. I mean, yeah, I can certainly see that seeing that matter. I would think it also matters like a certain level of discipline when it comes to paying to the attention to detail poker players, so that you like know the exploits to use against them or get whatever reads it is.
yeah, like you were talking about like the database of sims and whatnot, and I think early on when I was starting to play live, and you see so many like people doing this now, where like they say like I'm allowed to call here or I can do this, and like that's how your frequencies become so far off because like when things mix frequencies, you can do a lot of things with your specific hand. But if you just are always taking the aggressive action or always taking the passive action in that spot, your range is losing infinite EV. And so I think like paying attention to those small details and those exploits, it works in the GTO world too, where it's like you have to pay attention to your own frequencies and your own exploits or your own strategies to be really really sharp. And when you're not like when you don't really care, like or you don't really want to be there, all of a sudden you get the hand that can like it can bluff sometimes and you bluff it every time, or you get the spot where you're supposed to um, four bet small and you four bet jam because it can do that, right? And so that's yeah, it's a good point about paying attention and like when you really care, you're noticing all of that stuff way more.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think in an ideal world, if you're ideally trying to maximize your edge, you have to. I am guilty of not doing this actually, but um, in my view, it makes some sense for me in a lot of situations because I'm no longer working to be purely a poker player, and it makes sense to sacrifice some edge
For sure.
for the sake of other things. But no, sometimes I'm just bad to be honest. But yeah, ideally you'd be paying attention to every single hand.
I mean, it's an impossible task, though, right? Like, especially in terms of playing long series or like the World Series of Poker is a good example of this. Like, you're going to have to play your B game or C game and like get through days and lean in the right direction of things because yeah, I mean, it's an impossible task to always pay attention, especially when you want to enjoy it or you're playing a game that you want to enjoy. You're always giving away a little bit of that to have fun conversations or to enjoy your time a little bit more.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think it's I think it's one of these things where it's not really worth it to like fuss over every single hand, unless you're just. I mean, there's other ways to scale your effort. That's where I advocate. For example, looking at better tournaments to play or starting, like the thing you're doing with like coaching coaches or like leading group of coaches, like that. That makes sense to me. That's one option. Um, been exploring options for a while myself. I've come to a few, but it took some creativity. I personally thought the idea of like exploring in the direction of making it more fun, just because it's so just not a path not taken. Frankly, um, it's really what it is. Let's talk about meditation. I know that you are quite an advocate of meditation, or at least that's my read from my online research. Why don't you tell us a bit about your experience with that and what you have to say about that?
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. Probably wherever you saw that was a couple years ago. I would say I'm not as into it now. I think it's like kind of a cool thing to do, and I do think that like being mindful and being present is extremely important. But I care a lot less about my like direct prep. I would say like early on playing higher stakes and things, I would try to be perfect and work out in the morning and then sit and meditate and really just like focus on trying to be present and ready to go. Um, Whereas now I have some like little tricks and things that I use to try to like um, improve my presence and be more focused in game. I go to a therapist guy that kind of helps me with certain visualizations and things like that to kind of like how can I in 10 seconds like regain my focus or how can I in 10 seconds go from being pretty emotional to and fatigued to like calm and collected kind of. So I definitely have some things like that, but in general, I think it's less important in my life at the moment to like really do that in preparation of tournaments.
Oh, okay. But do you think the visualizations and all that stuff is very useful?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you just like you can't lose your mind, right? Like in poker, there's so many times where you see. I mean, everyone's seen it, but like you see really good players like lose some spot, have six big blinds, and then just like torch it off or something. And so like for a lot of people, and I think maybe I was that way a couple years ago. you have to have these practices and these things to like just not let yourself lose your mind playing poker tournaments. But if you're but now I feel like I'm more in a place that I just like I just love playing and I love competing and I really really enjoy the process. It's much more difficult for me to like get myself out of the kind of competitive mindset. So I do think that like visualization and meditation and things are just important in life or in general. I mean, like look at like I've been playing a lot of golf. I love golf, and when you golf with really good poker players, they are very even keeled on the golf course. And if you get paired with randoms or you go golf with, some other people that haven't worked on their emotional control as much, maybe they hit a bad shot and like just lose their head and just like lose their mind or snap a club or do whatever. It's like, having that emotional control is really the goal, and having the presence is the goal. And whether you get there through meditation or other methods, visualizations, or however you get there, it doesn't matter. But the end goal, I think, is to kind of stay even keeled, have good emotional control, and like be able to be very present and focused.
Well, meditations and breath work are uh, physiologically supposed to do this.
So,
Um, just for the record, that's like it's like literally like making it so that your mind isn't seesawing as hard or as frequently, you can say, as like intensely. I think
sure.
maybe a way to put it, like it's still possible for it to seesaw, but it's not doesn't seesaw so hard that you like lose control.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, breath work, I think, is massive. Of just like learning how to like, and I'm not great at it, but like people use the mouth tape now, right, to get the breath in through the nose. You see these boxers or high competition, like highly competitive people, really focusing on their breath to give them that presence, and I think that's huge. Anytime I feel anxious or anytime I'm needing focus, I'm really trying to focus on breathing through my nose and like slowing down my breath, because if you can match your breath with your heart rate in a nice like cohesion, you just like get that presence back and those good feelings back. So yeah, I think that's huge. Have you messed with that much?
I should actually probably do breathwork more. I'm going to India shortly to do a bunch of this kind of
Nice.
stuff. It's like one of these things that I find very difficult to balance because actually there's a lot of different spiritual practices that can be done. I'm intrigued by their potential, but I also am uncertain of their potential. And I've had like I've done some stuff and some things I'm naturally pretty good at anyway. But I do think there must be something there. I specifically wanted to focus on meditation because I knew that my mind was like not. I wanted to discipline out of my mind, so
Nice.
I wasn't just like spazzing out really hard all the time. And I could just like focus on complicated tasks.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, so I think that's huge, and I'm excited for you to like go explore that more, because that's something that I definitely want to do. I think that stuff is like very aspirational in many ways, and like disciplining the mind, like trying to like do really hard things and like building that resilience. I know that for me, like um, if I'm not doing hard things and I'm a little bit too comfortable, like a little bit like too, let me lay in bed in the morning and roll out of bed at 9:30 when I said I was going to get up before 8 or something, like I'm just less resilient with everything in life in that moment, right? So I think that stuff's like super aspirational, and I want to spend more time on trying some different habits and things like that as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of I probably should document exactly what I do and record it. I have the plan to record a little bit more of these sorts of things. Allegedly, according to my spiritual teachers, the meditation and yoga goes further. It does more for you than in other places. I don't know if that's true, but if that's true, I'm going to Rishikesh, which is apparently one of the better places to do it in the Himalayas and all that
That's
stuff.
amazing.
It sounds ridiculous a little bit, but maybe it's true. I don't know. Like,
People, people,
how can I
yeah,
prove that it doesn't? And as far as doing tough things goes, I have noticed that it seems like when I'm in an indulgent state of mind in general on one particular vice or whatever it is, it seems to carry over to other ones, and I start like making stupid decisions. But um, where I start like losing my discipline, but then it seesaws back where my mind is like, you know what, gotta get my shit together and whatever, which I think is it's kind of an inevitable. It led me to this idea like maybe there's an inevitable pathway of sorts of everyone. Um, that I can't prove also. But if we're talking about really hard things to do, I got a few hard things that might intrigue you.
Yeah.
One thing, I don't know if I'll do this, but there's like a 50-mile ruck challenge. Apparently, that sounded like fun on the coast of Normandy with like Navy SEALs and stuff, but very doable. Um, this was pitched to me recently. There's some challenges like that. Uh, well, ones that don't require you to die, but walking around with a ruck, which is like 15 extra pounds, etc., seemed like there's some reasoning to do stuff like that. Gotta come up with some more stuff too.
Yeah, I mean temperature, like those sound very hard. That sounds aspirationally tough to achieve. But it's one of these things like anytime you do something that's really hard like that, it is miserable in the moment. But once you finish, your brain, everything just feels so good. You feel like you really achieved something. And so like that'd be a really cool thing to like work for and try, especially off the course of Normandy.
Uh, I think I will do that. Allegedly, it's very safe, which is one of my things that I look for is safety. I don't know. One thing that is interesting for me to experiment is if the stuff like really raises your resilience and other things, but that would imply that like just doing things that you don't want to do makes you more disciplined. I mean, I guess that makes sense. That sounds like what discipline is, right?
Yeah.
So maybe just the key to having really good discipline is just doing stuff that sucks.
Yeah, yeah. I think that I'm not an expert in this. I don't really know, but from certain people I listen to and things, it's like they say that there's actually like a nerve bundle in the brain that when you do tough things, it grows, and when you're like really comfortable and indulgent, it's like shrinking because you're like not working this like part of your brain, and when it grows,
Really?
it like when it's like at its like whatever large sizes, you like don't get chronic diseases as much, and you don't get certain bodily issues as much, so that your body actually has more resilience like anatomically. So it would make sense that it would kind of do that for the brain too. But yeah, I'm not an expert, but that's what I believe. I believe that to be at least anecdotally true.
It seems to make sense. I will say that it's definitely true that if you are trying to do something, it makes sense to just really focus on it. And even when, like, this is quite important, even when things are difficult, when you're doing one thing, whether it's like reading, for example, you have to like keep pushing through, and that's the only way to expand your like capacity to read for longer periods of time and go like, deeper. I found that to be true, and then eventually I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna ordinate myself towards doing these kinds of things more. I put out a tweet recently saying something like this, where it was like, okay, it makes more sense as I was trying to optimize um, my own. I was trying to solve a lot of complex problems, and I realized, okay, it makes more sense to just do them all at once rather than do A, B, C, D, and F like in some weird order, uh, and then just keep switching them up. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think about this.
Do one at a time for a long time. Focus on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, dude, I think about this in poker a lot. Like, the Landon uh, Jeremy Becker thing was talked about, and right when they were starting to talk about this, I thought to myself about my view of Sean Deeb early on. I like Sean a lot, but I didn't know him at the time in like the first World Series I played, and I was kind of that kid that was like, oh, I'm better than this guy. He doesn't play no limit very much. Like he sucks, whatever, right? Like I was like the young kid, and as I've gotten older, and he helped me a lot. Like the example he set helped my mindset a lot, because having that endurance to go play a full summer is so tough. It's so tough to like have that endurance to like go and be playing well on day 35. And it's really easy on day one to be excited and all this stuff. It's much more tough, much more difficult later on. And yeah, I think that people don't talk about that enough in poker, because like everyone's talking about like the Landon Becker thing or whatever. And it's like I don't know who's better. I don't know their games at all, right? I'm not taking it on any action, but I did think it was funny that no one was talking about the fact that like however they are as a player on day one of the series is not going to be how they are on day 50. And having that endurance to like play a series and grind really hard and deal with the swings and all that stuff, like that's a skill in itself um, in the poker industry. And it's like if you can do that with your daily life and all the other things, you're just building endurance towards being able to like put in more volume or be sharp or win your on whatever day 40.
I will say, as someone that, yeah, I mean that is pretty much the key to doing that. I think it might be the case that various, I want to investigate that various yoga exercises work, like pranayama, breathwork exercises. They're supposed to give you more energy.
Nice.
I mean, there are other things that give you more energy too, such as sunlight, apparently, or just obviously going to the gym. Uh, maybe this doing this hating, I've hated my workout so much. Maybe they help me so much. Um, I just do them 5 times a week for some reason. If you want more of it, you got to go apply yourself and go through the pain. And if you want less of it, you do the opposite. Do you have any other aspirations for things other than pokers, or like a particular reason why you got into golf?
um, I don't know. I think that a lot of the poker guys were golfing a lot, and it's like just a pretty fun outlet. It also forces me to like be outside. I definitely had some years where I wasn't playing live and just playing online, where I was doing everything I could to just be at my computer as much as possible. I was switching my diet to eat less. I was not going out in the sun. I was not in great shape. All those things. So I think that golf is a nice thing that allows me to uh, just be outside, be out in nature a little bit more, like manicured nature, and just be around people and have fun and compete too. So it's pretty fun to like have some competitions and gamble on the golf course and stuff like that. So definitely a hobby I'm enjoying trying to get better at.
One thing is, a thought occurred to me, which is something that golf and poker have in common, or at least definitely could, is that both of them can take you to some presumably really cool locations. I mean, I know poker does, and I'm sure golf does too. So, like, I could see that being cool. You could go, I don't know, go to some like really cool golf course.
Yeah, for sure. One of my first like when I was just starting to play, Alex Livingston has a place up at Cabot in like Nova Scotia, Canada, and I forget if it was right after the series or not, but me, him, and Jake Daniels went up there and played golf for a weekend at this like beautiful course, and I could barely hit the ball. I was very very new, but it was like such a beautiful setting, and I'd never been up to like Nova Scotia. So yeah, I mean to your point, it's I love traveling and seeing new places and being out in nature. So I think that it kind of puts it all together, and you can go all over the world and play amazing golf.
What's the best poker location you've been to? And is that the if it's not that location, what's the best golf location you've been to?
Okay, I would say I love Da Nang, Vietnam. I went there
Yeah,
for
really.
the last Triton series. That Hanoi, I think, is what it's called, casino. It's just like so beautiful and peaceful there, and like tournaments were awesome and big. So I thought that's probably the favorite place I've been for. I bricked everything too. That was my first Triton series. I think I went. I just like bricked all the every tournament I played, but it's still my favorite spot. It was pretty cool. And then golf would have to be this Nova Scotia trip to Cabot. It was just beautiful. There were like bald eagles flying around. You're like right on the cliff over the ocean. It was gorgeous.
I will say for Da Nang, with Da Nang near the resort itself, I was not very impressed, frankly.
Okay,
Which actually you would hope that presentation is accurate, because that means very good news for you, because you're going to be really happy with a bunch of other locations.
great.
Um, there were some. I don't know if you're also including the Old Town, and if you didn't see the Old Town, you have to see the Old Town. That was a pretty cool location with all like the boats running around. And
Honestly, so like from poker location, I don't really leave the venue very much. I'm not great about that. So like it was the best venue I'd been to. I need to explore more, but on a lot of those trips, I just try to be so focused on playing and like I think that this next one in Montenegro, it starts in May. I'm gonna go like 4 days early. That way I can get adjusted to the time zone and explore some places. That way, once I get to the poker, I'm just poker. I think like Dan Smith seems to do this a lot, and he has like nice journeys and travels, and they always sound fun. So I was like, that's probably a good idea to like go out early to some of these places and explore more.
Yeah, Montenegro's pretty damn nice, or specifically Budva and that surrounding area.
Cool.
Super, super
I'm excited
nice.
for that.
Another place that's really cool near Da Nang is this place called the Marble Mountain. I've never seen a place like it. It's like a mountain where there's like buildings all around it, and there's all these like hidden caves and things like that, and it's got sculptures inside. And I've never seen any kind of. It's actually Buddhist and shows a little bit of like the Buddhist history with one of the Buddhas or
That's
whatever.
very cool.
Abu Lish, I forget how to pronounce his name. It's a complicated name, but yeah, it goes into the history of that guy and has like a ton of statues and cool stuff in there.
That's very cool.
Another thing is apparently I have adjusted a bit to the whole flying around thing, but I'm insane.
Okay.
In case you didn't know, so it looks like your body can adjust to it. Um, at least mine has been able to. And I'm trying to figure out how to make sure I get all the right sleep. So I've hired a sleep coach to manage all that stuff,
Amazing.
or to help figure out that stuff for me as of pretty recently. That might interest you or people in my audience. And if you didn't know, like, there's the Whoop, of course, and the Aura Ring. They're a bit more commonly known for dealing with these kinds of problems, or like traveling, and if you're making sure you get the right sleep.
Yeah. I wear the Whoop for the past few years, and it's huge. I think it's like a awesome data set that gives you like a great insight. At least for me, like not I'm sure working with a sleep coach and the data would be like amazing, but just the data itself is pretty cool.
Any last thoughts, or anything else you want to tell us about your coaching program before we wrap things up?
No. Honestly, thanks so much for having me on. I've been messing around with mixed games a little bit, so hopefully we get to maybe one day, a few years from now, we'll get to play some mixed together.
Yeah, sure. Well, good luck with the mixed games. There's value in the tournaments, is what I hear in those. And yeah, great talking. Appreciate a lot of your insights on poker, and I think a lot of the audience will too.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. See you, John.